Again, my name's Jereme Pitts. I'm with Librestream Technologies. And just real quick, I'm going to have the panel introduce themselves and give just a little bit of a bio. But one thing that, as we were putting this panel together, we got the chance to talk was, I was really impressed with this group right here. For one, it's a very diverse group as far as what they're trying to accomplish. They all have production products that they put into their businesses. They all have really interesting things that they're working on in labs, trying to figure out how it can impact their businesses. So I'm really excited to have this panel share with you guys. We will reserve some questions at the end. If you guys want to ask some questions, we would absolutely love that. So I want to get started with right away. You guys want to introduce yourself real quick and just say a little quick thing about maybe what you guys are focused on, your group's focused on.
Yeah, my name is Brian Melven. I'm with CBRE, a commercial estate company. We are rolling out the HoloLens 2 to our technicians out in the field who manage facilities for companies.
All right, very good. I'm Cindy Carbrey. I'm the CIO of Kautex Textron. Textron is mainly aerospace and defense, but we're actually the rare BU in Textron that does automotive. So we've used the HoloLens 2, mainly the focus that I'll be talking about is from an AR perspective. We use the HoloLens 2 for remote support. We've also used it even for run it rates with our customers. We do use some VR. It's not as prevalent, but we do use some of that for engineering design collaboration.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dave Dolenga. I'm proud to be a member of General Motors. And my role at General Motors is to work in our Immersive lab. And in that lab, we do a lot of testing of various pieces of software and hardware and try and match that up with our design group, our engineering group, our manufacturing and service group, and even our sales group to see how those applications would fit their environments and hopefully return a good return on investment for them.
Perfect.
Okay. Hi, I'm Steve Paul. I lead the visualization studio for AECOM here in the US. And we're part of marketing within the US, but we do things that are both community-based on a sort of a consumer level and things that are very higher end on the engineering and design level as well, too. So we kind of cover a lot of the bases. We've done work, with the HoloLens and with the Gear VR and basically everything in between there too. So, and Josh and I are apparently the disruptors here, so we're all completely out of order here. Go ahead, Josh.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Josh DeStefano. I'm the West Coast Innovation Leader for DPR Construction. That just means that I work for a big general contractor that's really interested in being innovative and advancing our industry. So we have experimented with augmented reality. Obviously, that's why we're here. My focus areas are kind of what we're calling digital twin or virtual design and construction, and reality capture, which is sort of like the plan and the actual. And I think that augmented reality for us is kind of the interface to those things. So really interested to see where this goes.
Perfect. Well, that was a great intro. And again, like I said, there's a tremendous amount of experience up here on stage. So looking forward for us to learn something today. So we put together some questions to kind of ease us in. So this is where it's going to be awkward. Back and forth. So Josh, I was actually thinking maybe you could kick us off a little, thinking about like, how has XR progressed over the last few years? What are the things you've seen to kind of get you excited and makes you think that the industry's gone further in the last couple of years?
Yeah, the last couple of years have been super exciting. I was taking pictures because in my world, I don't see some of these headsets. So I'm really excited to be at like a conference that's a little bit different. But in my experience, we started experimenting with augmented reality probably about 2015, 2016-ish. And I remember we had a groundbreaking ceremony on a big project here in SoCal. And we wanted to impress everybody, obviously. But we were playing around with augmented reality. We wanted to show people what the site would look like by pointing an iPad at it. And kind of at the time, it seemed like a crazy idea. We were playing with an app called Juneo, which is basically built into Apple's AR kit now, and QR codes and doing all this fun stuff. But I think the best part about it was, showing people they could point their phone or their iPad at something and then something else would pop up and they would see what the site was going to look like. So that was sort of the first version in my experience. And then now today we're putting the models that we're creating of the buildings that we're going to go build into someone's visor so that they can see what the future holds for them in that project. And I think that's amazing. So really a lot of advancement.
That makes a lot of sense. Are you getting feedback from your users that they've noticed that advancement, how it's going from a single thing to a whole building?
Yeah, I don't think it's as widespread where we're getting, people have the breadth of experience there. But yeah, the folks that are on our technical teams that are getting in there are really excited about where things are headed, and the foundation that we've had with, getting it out there. And now it's a lot more, there's a lot more consumer awareness about what AR is. So
Right.
I think people are excited for sure.
Terrific. Maybe we'll stick to this side. Stephen, how about you? What are the advancements you've seen that are exciting you and users as you're talking to them?
Oh, well, there's a lot, there's a lot of new and exciting things, I guess, but I want to kind of preface my excitement with a little bit of the cautionary tale. When Jeff Friedman invited me to come and be a part of this again this year, last time I was here in person in 2019, 3 years ago, before the pandemic, in the before times, everything was very exciting, and it was a whole new world that we were looking at. And all of us here were super excited about that. We were getting super responsive feedback from our clients and things. And then with the pandemic, suddenly nobody was interested. And, and that's why I didn't want to come. It's because, from 2020 until recently, my team anyway has not had the opportunity to do that much. But I'm glad it came, and because again, the technological advances and talking with people here and outside in, other people working, other practitioners in the XR world, that's a common story. I was like, what are you guys doing with VR? They're collecting dust in the closet. Nobody's interested. Everybody's just too worried about getting through. And, I'm glad I'm here, very glad I'm here. I was having dinner with a friend of mine last night from Mars Mystery, who's out there somewhere, and is presenting on a panel later on. And he said, if the Quest had come out a year earlier, we would all be just like rolling in success right now, because it is everything that we had hoped it would be. It is affordable, it is tetherless. It offers those 6 degrees of freedom, and there's a ton of content on it, and it's very easy, for the most part, to use. Right? I've run into my own share of issues with Quest and Meta and Horizon and all that, but I think we're at this place now where we're getting past that. Certainly, we've gotten past that peak of expectation, right? You all know the curve, and we've even maybe starting to dig ourselves out of that trough of disappointment or disillusionment that we all know. And I think now, because of the technological advances that we have with the Quest, and yes, with Meta and Facebook and all of that, and the more pervasive our work in XR is with the common public, with people out there just using it, the consumers socially, it becomes more natural to people. And that makes it an easier sell at the enterprise level. It's not this big thing where we have to get a super graphics workstation and tether everything together and set it all up and go and cart these things around. We can hand them a headset and even remotely help people orient themselves and train them in on how to use it. And that's a huge promise to us looking forward too. So, that's kind of where I'm at.
I think it's interesting. I think a lot of people are probably have a lot of questions on what you just said. And I think our next question will actually pull on some of those threads. I think it'll be interesting. Did you guys have anything you wanted to add on? I have to do the back. Anything that you guys wanted to add on? Just things that you're seeing new, excitement? Like, what are the changes you've seen over the past few years? Anything quick that come to mind for you guys?
I guess I'll just mention really quick, working from a lab perspective, it is amazing to see all the new products that are coming out. It's amazing to see how the technology is growing and changing so quickly. And we'll get into some more of the discussions about where we need it to go in the future. But it's really nice to see product evolving and becoming more and more mainstream.
Yeah.
So, Jereme, I was just going to add to it, because when you first asked the question, I first thought about technology.
Yeah.
But as you were talking about the effects of the real issues of the last couple of years, I started to think that what's actually most exciting is everyone's new openness to tech.
Yeah.
Right. In my roles that I've had, I've been using GoToMeeting and remote meetings for a very long time, and that was always looked as, unproductive, or you can't have a productive meeting online. You can't possibly have a productive meeting in VR. And we've started to break those barriers where people see, oh, I can digitize the space and bring it to you. Oh, I can put you in a design model. Oh, I can put you in this, or we can all converge in the same space with this tech. And so the Zoom meetings and Teams and all of us coming together virtually, I think, has started to open the door for us to use this tech on a different level. So I think from a user standpoint and like an openness and awareness about what this is, that's probably the most exciting in terms of what's actually happening versus maybe the tech.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
Jeremy, I also want to add that the pandemic actually brought some opportunities for us to showcase this technology. So with all the travel restrictions, with sites being locked down, often case it was a single user with a HoloLens that was able to be present and yet have 10 other people, there, virtually. So we saw lots of opportunities where, we had a manufacturer that needed to service a machine. The manufacturer was based here in the US. The piece of equipment was in the UK. And rather than fly him out, we had a single technician with a HoloLens on who was able to kind of remote assist in and talk to that manufacturer. So in a lot of ways, the pandemic, while it was a horrible thing, in a lot of ways, it did provide some opportunities to showcase these technologies.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And there's kind of a mixed bag with people over the kind of the human side of it, and then on the technology side, kind of advancing that. I think it's a good point. But I'd like to pull on a little bit of what you said. Just what are the current capabilities that you guys are using? What are the challenges with those capabilities? Are there things that could be improved in XR that would help your adoption and things like that? Cynthia, I'm thinking maybe you take this one first, if you wouldn't mind.
No, it's fine. So obviously there's real-time interaction, right? That's one of the huge benefits. Similar to you, we did use remote assist. We were actually using it before the pandemic. So we were already seeing some benefits in terms of saving travel cost and getting, of course, that interaction, troubleshooting, et cetera. But then when COVID hit, obviously it became a lot more used across our business. So having that real-time interaction and that feedback is good. Also, one thing that I think we found interesting during the pandemic was the social aspect of it. It actually helped our teams continue to bond and collaborate. And that was something, they certainly could do that over Teams, but there was something more personal about the interaction with the HoloLens. So that was something that we found to be very, very beneficial to us. For us, what we did was a very low-cost solution. So that's another benefit to it. It was low cost. It was pretty easy to roll out. It wasn't an onerous or heavy deployment. And then once the users had initial training, then it became easy to use. But moving on to the challenges, right? There is still an initial learning curve. So they had to go through that, and there were concerns. There were concerns from our plant, EH&S. There were concerns really from the users as they were learning. Complaints about the bulkiness of the equipment, but now, of course, we see we're making huge strides on that. With the VR stuff, we heard a lot of complaints around nausea if they wore it for certain things. So we still need to improve in that respect. Also, I think it's mainly an issue that the businesses have to deal with. I don't think it's something that the technology companies can deal with. But we had big GDPR concerns because most of our company is in Europe. So we found really quickly that if somebody just watched through the screen and you got a capture of them and then you were recording and posted that, that's against GDPR. So we had to get rid of that. So that's, certainly a concern, not one that the technology could deal with. But those are the major things that we faced.
Interesting. I was curious if you thought it's kind of the old chicken and the egg. If the glasses get smaller, hardware gets smaller and easier, does that bring more people, or do you need more people to get the hardware company involved? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think that even with the audience that we have, which granted isn't a huge audience, we're all here for this conference and that's good, but it's a growing space. I think the technology providers have really been good about innovating on their own and growing it, because I think they do know that more people will come once the technology is more intuitive, lighter, less nausea causing, all of that.
Yeah. Brian, would you add anything to that on like what are the challenges or the things that you've seen that's clear to you? If these were better, I think I could get more adoption, more usage.
Yeah, so one of the challenges we have is just connectivity. We don't use these kind of in an office space. These are out in the field. They're on a manufacturing line. They're in a basement somewhere. They're on a roof somewhere. So that is one challenge, connectivity. So our technicians are constantly toggling between the building Wi-Fi and their mobile hotspot, trying to find a reliable signal. So that's one challenge. We've also got challenges with just the demographics or the abilities of the users. Some people, everybody loves the technology when they see it for the first time, when they put the headset on and they first see their first holograms. They make all kinds of comparisons to Iron Man and Minority Report. They all love the technology. But then, a month later, when they're going to do their job, will they put the headset on? Will they use it? And a lot of times that's just their comfort level with technology itself. Some folks, they've been doing their job a certain way for 20 years, and they don't really want a new piece of technology to help them do their job. So those are kind of the challenges we're trying to overcome, and certainly the privacy concerns as well. We get that as well. So
that makes a lot of sense. You guys want to add anything to that side of it? Maybe even the human side, you kind of mentioned some in your previous.
Sure. Yeah. I think I was going to jump in here on what Josh was saying earlier about one of the benefits, and over here on that side too. What we've all been saying is one of the positive sides of the pandemic is that it did sort of open people's eyes to how remote connection can work, and that it could work even better in many ways than being in person. I think those of us who work remotely these days know our productivity has generally gone up with that, and our connection with our other workers is certainly on a par, I think, with what we were doing in the office in person. So that kind of openness of idea, that normalization, if you will, of working in this virtual world is really helping us too, I think, to get this technology to a place where it seems natural. And that's really the key. I think with the chicken and egg thing we were talking about over there, it's both. It absolutely is both. Like I said, if the Quest had come out, a year before the pandemic, we would be in a different position in the industry here with this. And I think that especially when you're dealing with the public, when we went into the pandemic, we started doing virtual rooms, right? Which are just those virtual 360-degree virtual tours.
Right.
Nothing super technologically innovative at all, but they took off. They were huge because everybody could access them for community meetings, which we do a fair amount of, public engagement. It was a huge seller because people didn't have to be there physically at a specific place at a specific time. They could access it on their phones. They could access it on their tablets, on their desktops. And I think XR has to be that same way to really make it in both the consumer level and at the enterprise level. It has to be easy. Easy always wins. And then people will use it, even if you have been doing it the same way for 20 years with pencil and paper even. If it's easy, if it's comfortable, you'll put the headset on because it makes you work and live better. And I think that's where we need to go with this. And certainly the technology is getting there. I think we have to continue to build our apps and our implementations of that technology with the end user in mind. Again, the first speaker here today was talking about humanity, and our connection to that. And I think that's super important now. We've gone past the wow factor of, it's Iron Man or whatever. Now we have to say, well, how do we really connect? How do I connect out with you guys? how do we connect as humans on that level in that virtual space? And we're still learning that. So
I think it's a really good point, especially when you think about there's some great technologies. You walk the floor, certainly other technologies that aren't here, and just how we, they're there. There's a lot of great things people can do, but that adoption side, as you were saying, that human side is obviously, one of the key factors we probably many people in this room deal with.
yeah,
Which I want to kind of bring it over to you, and I'm thinking about, just the size of the organization you're at in GM. And there's got to be a lot of competing priorities. I'm sure a lot of people in the audience deal with that. Like, why would you say at GM, why XR? Why should someone here that's thinking about this, like why XR over another technology? Why should they be thinking about this?
That's a really good question. And I guess we've been living that at General Motors for a while now. So I'll kind of relate it back to my experience or how I grew up in GM. I've always been involved, I was involved in product development for over the last probably 15 or 20 years. And we did a lot of upfront work with CAD and with finite element analysis. And it was on a screen, and that was useful. But it was often still difficult to convey things. We would have team meetings, and you'd show PowerPoint presentations, or you would pull up an Excel graph. And although those are helpful and positive, they're not experiences. So the key word there, I think, for General Motors and what General Motors has learned is it's that immersive experience that really, really makes the difference. Many times GM got criticized for working in silos. We have our engineering groups, we have our styling groups, we have our manufacturing groups, our service groups, our sales groups. And as you're developing a vehicle, what you really want to develop is a vehicle that does the customer right and meets the customer's needs. But many times we could get lost in our own objectives or in our own subsystems and almost sub-optimize a certain area of the vehicle. What's so powerful about XR and what's so powerful about immersive is it gives those groups a common experience. And when you have that common experience, the debating starts to end. The I don't understand that, or I don't really believe what you're saying comes to an end. And people put themselves in the other person's shoes, and you're able to make decisions. And you're able to have the conviction to move forward. And in a big company, sometimes that's difficult. Our chief engineers basically have the final say. But when you can basically work together to make sure that you've got a more vehicle optimized solution with those experiences, make those trade-offs early on while you're still in the digital world rather than in the physical world, the bottom line pays off. For General Motors, it's not always about trying to hit the bottom line in terms of, I've got to save money by reducing physical properties. I've got to save money in general. Where we're finding the value in VR and XR and AR is in that experience, because it allows you to make decisions quicker, more confidently, and upfront in the development process, which inherently just did those things that we were just mentioning. It saves time, it saves money, and it saves the properties in the process.
I wish you had a mic so you could just drop it.
We're done
I
here.
was thinking of the answer. It's like you were Steven Spielberg on that. Hey, Josh, I was thinking I might call on you for this also for a couple reasons. One, construction company, kind of, I would imagine traditional, or we talked about some of those things. You guys have really gone into this a big way. You told me about a lot of support you guys have from executives when we talked. Just why XR technologies over other technologies that would compete in your business?
I would say it's not over other technologies for us. So I talked in my intro a little bit about virtual design and construction. That for us is the early stages of maybe creating a digital twin. It's interesting, everybody uses that term different too. So, so I talked about it being an interface for us. We're creating a lot of data, and construction's like very much being disrupted right now. It's also very, traditional, like you mentioned. So there's been a lot of, resistance to it. I'm fairly young, and I've been at it for a long time, believe it or not, in construction. So I've witnessed the digital transformation and seen this wave happen. And I wouldn't say it's a top priority, but it's something that we're paying a lot of attention to, because it extends the life and the utility of what we do in those early stage planning stages, where we're creating digital twins or models of all the systems of the building and trying to make sure that everything that's gonna go together. and go together correctly in the model. So I look at it as a way to get that information out to more people, whether it's a visor, a set of glasses, an iPad, a phone, whatever it is, so that we can not have that information stop. And I know that sounds crazy in other industries. There's, folks are talking about using Omniverse and all this kind of stuff to instantaneously share data. Well, the construction industry is just barely starting to see the possibilities with that stuff. I shouldn't say just barely, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
It's early days. Our software companies are starting to partner up and with other folks like game developers and things like that to think of how do we bring the consumer tech that we are used to into our professional world. So for me, it's looking at the horizon. This is coming. It is very nascent. It is very much early, but it's going to be a way for our folks to interface. We need this to not be a brand new thing when that becomes, something. And for us, I want to influence it. I want to be part of saying, well, okay, you're developing a great tool for that, but there's some, adjacencies in terms of frameworks and workflows that will help my guys out in the field build this hospital or something like that. But some of the issues that we have is that, the things that we want to use it for, they're all kind of different, right? And they require a different level of precision. I see a lot of these B-roll videos where folks are looking at a model and it's amazing and all this kind of stuff, and they jump right in it. But what my folks need is that to align with real life in a precise way, so that when they look at a pipe, it shows that it's off from the model, that's actually what's happened. Maybe it was put in the wrong spot, right? And it's giving them, information. And then there's all kinds of stuff we can tack onto that. So it's really about looking to, the next step, the next way of the way our folks are working in the field, understanding what our clients are looking at and thinking about in terms of managing their facility. And a lot of that information starts in the very beginning. So AR seems to, be a good way, and VR, XR really, seems to be a good way to sort of fill that gap for getting information to the field, having an interface with, some of the other information that'll come out through
it
other
seems
ways.
Uniquely in construction, you guys are around visualization. I mean, seeing a problem is worth so much time, which is of course money for you and the owner and all that. So that's really interesting. Feels like it's kind of on a precipice of really bursting over, because you can get people on board that visualizations. New technologies help you do that and stuff. Really interesting. So I'm just looking at time here. I was thinking if we could just quickly talk about some use cases. I know there's probably people in the audience that are doing stuff already. There's probably people that are coming here to say, hey, what are the things I could be doing, and to learn from that. But so what are the applications that you guys are seeing with the greatest kind of return on investment, feedback from the end users and things like that? David, let's see. Actually, I'm going to switch this up. Stephen, I was thinking maybe I'd like to get you to give some feedback on that. Like what, really, what are these use cases that are, I know you said, hey, some of the stuff's been in the closet, especially COVID did some things, but where's some impact coming? Where are you guys seeing that?
Well, we've been, since I came into AECOM in 2014, we've been kind of pushing this envelope. I came in with the mission to make our visualization work more interactive, period. And that has included, obviously, XR. And over those years, those 8 years since then, I've seen a whole bunch. And our position within AECOM covers a lot of ground, as you might imagine, from dealing with the public in community meetings about a design that we're planning, whether it's for a water treatment plant or a highway or a hospital, stadium, any of that, to now we're starting to work with digital twins and the construction end of things and pulling all of that together and getting BIM to work with all of this. Before the pandemic, when we were digging, we had a lot of great responses to our safety training, virtual reality. And, I was a teacher for a long time. And one of the things that they teach you in teaching school is about that pyramid, where the top of the pyramid, the best way to learn something is to do it. And, back to your point, that doing it in VR is about as close as you can get to doing it in real life. And so that had a huge impact on a lot of people. And I think a lot of what we saw was improved results in safety training and in all training that we had used VR in. But again, you know, that sort of broadly accessible point of entry is really, I think, the key, whether it's construction people, engineers, designers, or the public at large, the consuming public at large. It really has to be easy for them to work with and accessible. These virtual rooms that we were doing, while they're not technically VR, you certainly can put, you know, your phone in a cardboard and make it look like VR. But it is something that was accessible. It is something that is very easy to use and very broadly based. And people loved it when they saw it. You know, even when they saw it, when they were able to see something in a proper VR jumping off from that platform, it made a huge difference to them. So, you know, successes for me, there's a lot of them. There's a lot of them, but there's a lot of challenges that we're looking at.
Well, it sounds similar to Josh that you're you know,
Yeah.
getting that information, showing that information. There's value in that. It seems
Right. And
as
it's multifaceted, as Josh was implying there too. It's not just XR, it's also XR and combined with accurate BIM and accurate
Yeah.
information coming through there. And that's a whole process and a whole culture that we have to continue to develop as we move forward.
Interesting. Hey, Brian, I was thinking on part of during our conversation, just the diverse applications you guys have from, you know, just a plain building and kind of the process of building that building, but then managing all the things that you do. Is there some applications you could share with the audience, return on investment that you've seen that really is kind of like really something that gets to the heart of the matter?
I mean, so without a doubt, the biggest one, return on investment, is just the remote inspection,
Yeah.
the troubleshooting. By far, that helps us get equipment, you know, maintained and repaired faster. So that's number one. Remote inspections. You know, a while back we had a fire break out in a facility, and within very short amount of time, we had someone on site with a HoloLens looking at it with, you know, multiple other people sitting in a conference room or multiple conference rooms around the world, looking at that damage, inspecting what might have caused the fire and you know how much damage was done. So it's really that able to, you know, inspect from afar. And then the training. You know, we train a lot of lab technicians on how to operate training, and it's just a more effective way to do that training where they can use the XR technology, whether it's VR or AR, to learn how to use that technology.
Will you get feedback from management saying like that's a killer app, or that's exactly what we thought this would be?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
That's terrific. So I'm thinking, just looking at time, maybe combining the last two questions. So it's going to be a sandwich, or I could make one up. I'll surprise you guys. So I would say two things are on my mind. Should VR be a technology your company should be interested in? Should this be the thing they're focused on? But also a little bit of how this will evolve over the next 5 to 10 years. We talked a little bit about it. We talked about hardware and some things earlier on in our conversation. Certainly Qualcomm bringing some of the really neat things that are going on up. But Cynthia, maybe I'd ask you, should your company be focused on this? Is this a technology that they should keep going with?
You know, it's not the best answer, I know, but it depends. So it depends if you're doing something for technology's sake, usually not a good idea, or if you have clear business outcomes that you want to accomplish. And if you do have those outcomes, it's great to run a pilot. You can do so with not a lot of investment, and you really see the results quickly as to whether or not you will achieve the ROI that you were hoping to achieve with the technology. And I think the other thing I would say is management buy-in is absolutely crucial. We would not have been successful if it wasn't for our COO who advocated it, and when the plants pushed back, was there to wield the power that I think IT doesn't have, the influence that IT doesn't have,
Right.
because we're just the technical people. So I think that was really, really crucial. And if it is going to be a top priority, and you decide that's what you want to do, having that management buy-in is really the difference between success and failure.
It's a really good point. A lot of you said that. You were saying it too on the construction side. It's easy to kind of get pushed aside, but management takes kind of good view of the technology. So I think that was a really good answer, and I think it was an honest answer, right? Because a lot of people are struggling, like, is usage the key? What are the metrics we should look at? What does this do? How do we measure some of the things you're talking about? Because they're not necessarily savings in hours, you could measure that dollar wise. But some of the things are just pulling people together and getting it right the first time, not having to go back. But kind of thinking ahead of all of that stuff, really, David, would you say over the next 5-10 years, do you have any kind of like epiphanies or things that you've seen? I'd love to hear your crystal ball of where this is going.
I wish I had a crystal ball on that. I think everybody does. I can tell you some of the things that I know GM is interested in and where we'd like to see the technology move. And so obviously we've talked a little bit about hardware and software today. Visualization in the VR and XR world is very important. It's really important to our designers. It's really important to our stylists to be able to see the proportions of a vehicle, to be able to understand things like colors and glosses and grains when you're working on a vehicle's interior. But we've got to move beyond that. And we started to see some of that in the presentation earlier. Our manufacturing people and our engineers want to be able to interact with that virtual world. So hands are incredibly important. Whether you're trying to assemble a vehicle and put parts on a car, whether you're a service technician trying to remove parts from a vehicle, or even if you're just trying to do some simple ergonomic studies about the vehicle itself. Your hands are going to play a very important role in that. So being able to see them and being able to track them accurately, all the different gestures that you do, all the finger movements and hand movements are going to be really important. And then you have to take that to the next level too. It's not just being able to see them, but those hands need to be able to trigger intuitive events. When a manufacturing person picks something up, they want that to feel like a pinch or a poke or a touch in order to make that happen. And then I'll go one step further. The biggest challenge to a manufacturing engineer is a blind operation, an operation where you can't really see it. So think about that in our virtual world for a minute. If I ask you to put on a headset and close your eyes, how are you going to experience that build event or that operation? And so being able to work with peripherals and get peripherals in a place where you can start to now truly interact and truly start to touch and tactile feel some of those things is going to be really, really important as well. If we're going to get to the point where GM is trying to get to, where we're trying to do more of this, if not all of this, virtually rather than physically.
Yeah, really interesting. Anybody else, would you like to add either, should your company be focused on this? Is this a technology the company should be thinking about overall? Or I'd love to hear, I think the audience would love to hear too, your crystal ball of the next 5 to 10 years.
I can give you one for construction. I think that in I don't know the exact timeline, but I think it's within that time. For us, the folks out in the field are super important, and that's also where a lot of manual process happens. So it's also where we need a lot of information. That's where a lot of the information that was being developed throughout the entire design and planning process is finally being realized, is with somebody putting some sort of material or assembly in place. So I think augmenting that process and giving those folks, the ability, I imagine, eventually all of our foremen having some sort of augmented reality visor and being able to pull up, the latest information, the latest, not only the plan, but leveraging the information that we're getting from what we call reality capture, the mapping that's happening on the devices and gaining insights from that, and then being able to sort of project in the future with analytics, right? And so that intersection is AR, right? You've got to have the real world around you, what you had planned, what the situation is now, and then some sort of projection. And there's a lot of information, and we used to rely on folks to sort of keep that all in their heads, superintendents and foremans, and I think it's more than folks can handle. And we're at a point where people are going to start to recognize that, I can be Iron Man, in a sense, and have an assistant, a digital assistant that sort of helps me with this. And I think we'll get over these humps of feeling dorky in a headset and things like that, and just realize that we can do better work, we can have more predictable outcomes. Yeah. We can have a safer workplace. People know what they're working on, and ideally the work is more fulfilling because it's not all a mystery.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And thinking about getting that technology into the field and then taking all that data and that information and being able to collate it and give it back to the right people at the right time. I think that's a really good example in 5 to 10 years of where it's going. So with that, I'm just thinking we're getting low on time, but I did want to leave for a few questions. If there's anybody that had some questions for the panel, it's early in the morning.
Hold on 1 second.
There's a mic floating around. Just give him time.
Would run, but have bad legs.
Hi, my name is Diana Silva. I'm with Thermo Fisher Scientific. And I wanted to ask David, our organization is also very, very large, like General Motors. How do you get financing to actually, just invest in this technology? Because I think that's something that we really struggle with, is just getting our leadership teams to kind of see the vision, see the opportunities. But I would love to hear if you have some advice.
He was going to ask you the same thing. No.
I was going to say, we'll have to talk later. It is challenging, and many times we talk about chicken and egg scenarios, and we see them a lot of times. So you see technology out there, you want to try and do something, but you don't have the equipment in place to do it yet. And so it becomes a chicken or the egg scenario. I can't do anything till I have the equipment, but I don't know what I want to do with it yet, and it becomes confusing. That's where, again, I think at least at General Motors, and part of my role at General Motors is to use our immersive lab to try and match up those applications. We look at different technologies, and again, you'll see a lot of them in the exhibit hall today, wonderful technologies that are out there, but you do have to find that match. And so you start with something simple, a few experiments. You start with a proof of concept that hopefully can demonstrate a return on investment. And then you have to be able to kind of cross that chasm, if you're familiar with that analogy, of how do you go from the innovators and early adopters to the more mainstream, pragmatist, almost cynical people that they're going to have to do this on an everyday basis. And that takes time. That takes some proof that what you're doing through the proof of concept is going to work. And then we talked about it. It's the cultural aspect of it and the buy-in from upper management to basically say, this is a direction we need to move in, and this is the direction we're going to move forward in. And when you start to mix all those elements together, you will have success. It can be a bumpy road, or you can fall into that chasm a few times until you get there.
Yeah, I think that is a very valid answer, Cynthia. I think about some of the things we talked about that you went through on that path and that journey. But to me, it feels like two things. One, finding those use cases, obviously. I mean, I think that's a given. But also that you guys all said in different ways to me when we talked, maybe not the exact words, but it's not if, it's when on this technology. So this isn't like a nice to have in a long-term way. This is going to happen. So how does your company embrace it? And then you also all said in different kind of ways, you got to have that management buy-in. Like there's got to be something giving you cover fire. Cynthia, you explained the project would have been sunk a couple times if it wasn't for that. So I thought that was really interesting. And
I think the thing that I would add is just getting folks to recognize that, at least for us, there's no like group of solutions or one solution for any particular use case at this point. And that's what's telling me we're really early, right? It's like I'm working with one company, and it's like I know they're a startup, and they might not be here tomorrow, kind of thing, but they have something really, really good. So that gives us a window into the possibilities. And I think a lot of folks, especially at a high level leadership, are like, all right, what's the solution? Let's implement it. And it's like, we have to find it. We have to develop it. We have to influence it. We have to tell people what we want out of this technology. We have a lot of folks that are, coming out of research and development that are like, here's a technology. What do you guys want to do with it, right? So I think in a lot of ways with this, we're way beyond that, but there's still a long way to go. So I think it's an understanding of we've got to work through this, not we're just going to go pick something off the shelf and buy it and it's going to work. And, that's what we do for the rest of our, time. It's not that simple.
perfect. Well, you guys, I can tell you from my perspective, I've enjoyed getting to hear your stories and meeting you guys and spending some time. Will you guys help me just give them a round of applause for... And if you have some questions, I can tell you there's a wealth of knowledge on this stage, so do find them in the hall. Ask some questions. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.